Hello and welcome to the Championship Weekly Podcast. The weekly podcast looking at everything happening in the Championship. And Rhys, this week we've had so many technical difficulties. As soon as I jumped onto the air, my microphone decided to break. I spent quite a lot of money on that, so I don't know whether you can hear me or not. My light is on its last leg, so I need to get new lighting in here because I am very worried it might genuinely, I'm not even joking or exaggerating here, might catch fire during the stream. Might be exaggerating a little there. So yeah, we are of course a podcast full of high production quality, though something that I can guarantee is that the quality of Rhys's football punditry and analysis is always incredibly high. So Rhys, how are you? And I know we're only on match day 2, but there are plenty of talking points, aren't there?
Oh, mate, 100%. And people should know if we say 4 o'clock and we go live, people should know it's always 10 past. If you still
Always.
believe that we go live bang on when we say, then you must be new around here. Back even in the over the bar days, people knew if we said 7 o'clock, we'd be on at 7:15. If we said 7:30, make dinner at 7:30, we'll be on at 8 o'clock. People should know that if we don't have technical difficulties, then it's not us. If we ever go live bang on time and everything's working, just put a little SOS in the chat because I promise you it's not going to be me and Ben recording. But yeah, it's been quite a good start to the season, hasn't it, in the Championship? I think you can make an argument for the three sort of relegated sides coming down from the Premier League that perhaps they've had a bit of a Premier League hangover. None of the three really are performing anywhere near their best, really, are they? If we're being perfectly honest, Leicester probably the most disappointing out of the lot, I'd say, controversially, out of us, Leicester and Southampton. I do think Leicester have been perhaps the most disappointing. They took their time to get going, didn't they? In the opening game week, they travelled to Preston, a team that a lot of people predicted to be struggling, and really Preston played them off the park, didn't they? They looked a much better outfit than Leicester did in that game. Then you look towards the bottom of the league. Who would have thought and again, we are 2 games in, so I'm not losing my mind or anything yet. But to have Sheffield United in the bottom 3, even at this early stage, is quite a big surprise.
Yeah, and that is something that we'll be talking about plenty later on because we have so much to talk about in this episode as it is packed. But let's start with some news, and we have plenty to talk about whilst I'm trying to deal with some technical difficulties. There you go. You always get that on the Championship Weekly. So I'll try and quickly figure them out, and I'll show you our first news topic in a minute. But let's quickly start off with some news across the Championship. So Sheffield Wednesday, they are still unfortunately in a lot of trouble at the moment. We heard Barry Bannon's interview on TalkSport a couple of weeks ago where he discussed some of the issues happening, especially with the staff not being paid and things like that. Look, as far as I'm aware, and I might be wrong, if I am wrong then tell me in the chat, but it doesn't look as though a move or a new change in ownership is going to happen anytime soon. So, Rhys, there have been plenty of protests. Sheffield Wednesday fans protested before their game with Stoke as well. How dire is this situation?
Really, there's no escape, is there? At this moment in time, as we sit here recording now, there is no light at the end of that very dark tunnel, is there, for Sheffield Wednesday? You look at the protests before the game against Stoke, a group of fans held a funeral, didn't they, for the football club? That they paraded a coffin around Hillsborough. I know when the game kicked off, the fans were whistling, weren't they, for the first 5 minutes, to the point that when Stoke opened up the scoring within the first, 2 minutes, 1 minute or so, there was actually a stadium PA, wasn't there, from I don't know what you call it, from the stadium announcer, I guess, who was trying to tell fans to stop the protests, to stop whistling. It's such a sad situation, is it, for Wednesday to be in? And I almost reiterate what I said last week in the fact that Wednesday are a huge club for this division. We shouldn't just think about the last few years. Historically as well, they're a huge club and they really shouldn't be in this position in which they are. And you look at the starting lineup and the squads that they had out against Stoke 4 players who started that game were under the age of 21. Some of them, I think it was 1 or 2 of them, hadn't even started or made a senior appearance for the club as of yet. So it shows you how backwards and how behind Sheffield Wednesday actually are. And you think back to that opening game week, and quite a sort of strong shining light was Nathaniel Chalobah, who picked up an injury, didn't he, almost straight away after scoring. So it's such a thin squad as it is. They're under embargoes. They can't bring in fresh faces at this moment in time either. It's just so sad to see this huge club in a really dire position. And again, it all comes down to one person.
Yeah, and it's Chanziri. So there have again been plenty of protests happening, and ahead of Sheffield Wednesday's Carabao Cup tie against Leeds United, they are also staging a protest. So many apologies if you can't read that text on screen at the moment. They basically, they are going to boycott their tie against Leeds United. And I'm going to read from their statement. They said, "Our reasoning is clear. Every ticket sold puts further money into the hands of an owner who has shown nothing but contempt for the fan base and disregard for the long-term future of our club. We understand how painful it is to miss a fixture against a major rival, but sometimes sacrifice is needed for the bigger picture." So, personally, I back the protest. I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea that should hopefully work. What do you make of it? That might be a dumb question, but it's a good thing, that protest, isn't it?
Mate, of course it is. And it comes down to that bigger picture, doesn't it? Okay, you might be missing one game, but it's one game. In context, it's just one game of football, isn't it? It's not gonna define the future. And I remember it was the opening weekend when the Sheffield Wednesday fans were held outside of the ground, weren't they? Because of safety concerns, because 1,000 fans are on the concourse at Leicester City. So about 2,500 fans or so were held outside. And I don't know why people do it. They interviewed this woman who was condemning the protests, who was saying the fans were in the wrong for protesting and how they should support their club. If I remember correctly, and tell me if I'm wrong in the chat, at the end of the game against Stoke City, the fans clapped the players off. The fans appreciate what the players are doing. So many more of these players, Barry Bannon, just to name one, could have easily walked away to another championship club. And the fact that they're still here, not getting paid, under embargoes, there's a difference between supporting your club and my voice is gone. There's a difference between supporting your club and realizing what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, and I remember under Marcus Evans, the attendances were absolutely abysmal. We protested as well, but unfortunately, fortunately, we were never in as bad a situation as they are in at the moment. So it is a real shame indeed. Moving on to something a little bit lighter. Stoke City have changed their badge, as you can see right here. On the left, you can see their old one, the classic one that we all remember and love. And on the right is their new one. I will share my thoughts on it in a minute, Rhys, but I'll keep it on screen for a few more seconds. What do you make of it? And do you like it when clubs change their badges?
So normally, I'll be honest, I absolutely detest it. I think a badge speaks, doesn't it, for the historical value of a club as well. And when they change into these horrible sort of newer traditional badges, I guess you'd almost call them, it almost looks like a kid has gone onto Word Art or has gone onto Paint and just slapped something together. However, I think this Stoke City badge is an exception. I actually really, really like it. The only thing that I would say about it is I don't like the gold around the outside, that sort of yellowy gold sort of board around the outside. I think take that away and it's a really, really nice badge. I think it's clean. I think it's going to fit into the shirt really, really well. You've got the stripes in the bottom left corner. Stoke traditionally on their home kit have red and white stripes. So I think it is going to suit very, very well. It's not one of these sort of circular badges that everyone seems to be getting. I remember, was it Newcastle? When they're changing theirs, is it a circle badge with NUFC? I mean, how creative is that? At least this, it refers back to the Potters. Okay, it doesn't have the Potters in writing, but the bottom right-hand corner refers to it. I think it's an exception. I really, really like it.
Yeah, and look, I'm not a huge fan of bad changes as well. We all remember when Leeds United had that absolutely abysmal attempt at recreating their badge, or, like changing their badge. Bournemouth did it quite well a couple of years ago when they changed their badge. Brentford have done as well. And if you do it well, okay, a lot of fans will complain about it, but the majority will get used to it, and then you'll hear nothing of it again, really. So, look, I really do like Stoke's new badge, so I'm not complaining about it. So, again, we need more tasteful badges in football. One final bit of news, and there will be other news bits, but we'll talk about them when we talk about some of the games that we're going to cover from last weekend. But Tom Brady criticised our old friend Wayne Rooney in the media. Now, I don't follow Tom Brady or any of that nonsense, so I ignored what the quote was. But Wayne Rooney, during an interview, came out with one of the most ridiculous statements I've ever heard come out of him. So I am going to play that clip for you, Rhys, and I want everybody else in the chat as well, including Ballum, good afternoon, Ballum, to give me your thoughts on it as well.
I don't think he really understood football that well at the time. Maybe he does now. Which
I don't think he does.
We are going to be doing this podcast twice a week. Am I going to have any issues with your work ethic?
I see that this week or last week from Tom Brady, and I think it was a very unfair comment. I mean, when I went into Birmingham, he was in a mess, really. Hence the fact that I went in, the players weren't really the players who could take the club forward. And I think Tom come in once, which was the day before a game where the day is a little bit lighter anyway. And I don't think he really understood football that well at the time. Maybe he does now. Which
I don't think he does.
No, but what he does understand is he's a hard worker. We know that, but so that's why I'm really disappointed with the comment, because football is not NFL. NFL works for 3 months a year. Players do need rest as well, and so I think he.
All right, well, that's enough of that. But what did you make of Rooney's initial statements? Because, okay, I think he explained Brady's comments quite well, so I don't need to go over them. But what did you make of Rooney's ridiculous statement, if you will? I might be feeding an opinion into your head here, so feel free to say something different.
See, we're only seeing a snippet, aren't we? We're only seeing a very, very small sort of segment out of Rooney's whole time at Birmingham. And they played a little bit, didn't they, in the sort of documentary? It may have been part of that clip we just played, but they played a bit where Rooney was taking a team talk, wasn't he? And he was pointing out things, and he didn't seem the most inspirational. I'll give Tom Brady that. Rooney wasn't electrified like, his name has escaped my mind, Plymouth. And then he went back to the Bundesliga, I think. Whoever that manager, the name just escaped me. It's going to hit me later on in the podcast. When I watch his speech, it fires you up, don't it? You listen to Wayne Rooney talk about it, and it's dull. So I'll give Tom Brady that. The way that Rooney's talking, it's very, very dull. But you have to realise, out of footballing point of view, how clever Wayne Rooney actually is. And sometimes that's the best way to sort of get wisdom through. Football isn't Tom Brady. Football isn't Ted Lasso. It's not all this Hollywood and all this action, all this excitement. There is periods of time within football where it's going to be quite sort of heavy going. It's going to be analysing clips, going over things over and over again. That's the way to improve. That's the way you're going to get better. You got to look at clips. You got to explain what's going on. You got to explain what you want from a management point of view. I actually think it's quite disrespectful from Tom Brady, to be honest with you. I think it's very disrespectful. Rooney's arguably the greatest footballer to pull on an England shirt. Definitely is in our lifetime. And the way he talks about him is quite sort of... I think it's very disrespectful.
I disagree with you in the sense that Rooney should really just stay away from management. like people are going to kind of like approach his comments from the point of view that now he's trying to get into full-time management. And when he was at Birmingham, it was absolutely abysmal. He only had a 13% win rate, only winning 2 and drawing 4, and of course losing the other 9. So I do kind of like think the fact that he took Birmingham from 6th to 20th, that ultimately got them relegated, is an abysmal indication of him as a manager. So I disagree in that sense, but if we look at it fairly, it is worth noting that no owners are bigger than a football club. Look, Tom Brady is a world superstar. Even I've heard of Tom Brady. I don't follow the NFL at all. And I think a lot of the time these big celebrities think they know more about sport and football than perhaps the actual football people do. And I think a lot of that comes from a complex that they're legends in their own sport. They know a lot about sport. They probably have the view in their mind that football is a bit of a franchise like the NFL, so kind of approach it through a very naive lens, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult, Rhys. I'm going to be a massive fence sitter here. I can see exactly what Rooney is saying, and I kind of don't like the way Tom Brady came out about him. Am I maybe being a little harsh here by talking about his run at Birmingham? Should we maybe sweep that under the rug a little bit?
We shouldn't sweep it under the rug, but what I would say is the headline of Rooney's time at Birmingham is that he took them from a team who were in the top 6 into League One, didn't he? And that's the headline. That's what everyone looks at. Us as fans, us as football analysts, us neutrals, just sitting here talking about it. None of us watching this have any idea really what goes on behind closed doors, do we? Were Birmingham genuinely a mess when Rooney was there? And the fact that he was trying to push standards up, did the dressing room just not align with his vision within that? And that's why performances fell off. It's a very sort of wacky sort of theory, but no one can sit here and try to deny it because we don't know what goes on behind these closed doors. What I would say is I'm all for these investors coming in, but I think it's very clear that Tom Brady and co aren't football people. So what I quite like about when the Game Changers came into Ipswich was that they knew that. The Game Changers, the trio, they knew that. They brought in a football man to run everything By the way, I've been on early for the last 7 days. My bags under my eyes are insane. I'm gonna. My speech ain't gonna be great. Put up with it. It's so you bring in a football man, don't you, to run things day by day, to oversee football operations, because that's not where your strength is. That's what they should have been doing. For Tom Brady to come out and just start slating Rooney, I think it's incredibly harsh. Because realistically, putting it out there, would Birmingham be in the position they are now, with the firepower they have right now, if it wasn't for that relegation?
Yeah, exactly. And again, like it's worth taking things or looking at things through a different perspective or kind of like through a fair point of view, because, like again, look at where they are now. We have no idea what's happened behind the scenes. So, yeah, I am sure we'll be talking about Birmingham a little bit more later on as well, because they are indeed doing very well at the moment. But let's have a look through some of the fixtures from this weekend. Let's talk about Sheffield United, though, because look, we are only a few games into the season. 2 if we're being specific, and we've heard absolutely every football commentator, every football pundit say that it's too early really to judge a team properly at the moment. But Ruben Selles has had an absolutely abysmal start to the season. They have a goal difference of -2. Rhys, I think the biggest problem I have is their lack of spending. So before we talk about their loss last weekend, I'm just going to quickly play you a clip from Ruben Selles' last press conference.
You've already touched on the need for reinforcements and how much, particularly in the defensive area. Is there any update on that? Is there any reason why it maybe is taking Sheffield United a little longer than other teams to get players in this month?
Well, I think our process has not been good enough. That is, I think it's obvious. In the beginning of the market, we talk about reinforcement with 3 players. Now with Anel and Kiefer gone, it's 5 players. We have not been able to bring anybody else for different circumstances, and on that, everyone has part of it. As I will accept my part of it, but everyone in that part of the process. And it's not going to be any update for the weekend. So we are now in less than 24 hours. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock is the deadline, and nobody's there just to make the medical or be supportive for us. So that is what it is. We are not going to make excuses. We are going to just focus on what we can do. We know the players that can go on Saturday and then make the difference, and my focus is going to be on them from now until after the game.
I know there's been talk about visas and
So, yeah, Sheffield United have had an absolutely abysmal transfer window. They've lost Vinny Souza, he went to Wolfsburg, and Medovcic, however you pronounce that name, so don't call me out in the comments for absolutely butchering his name. He's gone to Feyenoord. Kiefer Moore has obviously went to Wrexham. Ryan Brewster went to Derby, which I think is a decent grab for them. So they've signed a few players. They've signed Louis Barry, of course, on loan. Jibril Samare on the loan as well, who looks to be a very good player. A couple of obscure young Bulgarian players too. But when you look at their transfer window, they've only signed young players who are relatively unproven, bar from Louis Barry, who we are all very familiar with, and Tyler Binden. Are you a little bit worried about them? Or am I perhaps being a tad pessimistic about Sheffield United's transfer window so far?
Mate, I'm very worried. I'm very worried for Sheffield United. Yes, okay, it's a strong squad, as Ian rightly just put in the live chat there. Yes, it's a strong squad, but look at the players that Ruben Sellers has at his disposal still, and he's still not getting these players performing. If that's not worrying, I'm really not sure what is. When you look at their recruitment, it's very data-led, isn't it? It's very AI-led almost. It's very sort of tactical, isn't it? It's not working though, is it? It's really not working. And you look at the game at the weekend. I don't want to be praising Swansea too much, but because United didn't even have a shot on target. They didn't push their goal. They didn't press. It's so disappointing to see no reaction after the first game of the season. The loss to Bristol City. After the game, Ruben Sellers brought his players out onto the pitch, didn't he? And he confronted them sort of Phil Parkinson style. And I thought, okay,
Mick McCarthy style.
Mate, I had to. I was literally just looking at the name of the manager before I said that. But yeah, you look at...
And it was Phil Brown, by the way. Phil Brown did it for Hull, I think. I might be wrong.
Was it Phil Brown or Phil Park? Oh, of course, Phil Parkinson's manager of Wrexham, isn't he? And Phil Brown is...
I think I'm right.
Oh, my Lord. I can't even make the excuse that we do all 3 leagues anymore, can I? I can't even use it as an excuse. Okay, that was Paul.
I know, you look at, that was Benjamin quality punditry right there, because my punditry is absolutely abysmal. So,
mate, you set me up at the start of the show. You set me up right from the start of the show there, mate. But yeah, this is what I'm worried about Ruben Sellers, because you look at the squad, they have that front 3 that he put out against Swansea, Callum O'Hare, Tyrese Campbell, yes, he's been linked with a move away, and Louis Barry. 0 shots on target. They haven't asked questions of Swansea. You look at the defending against Bristol City, it's abysmal. Almost every goal, they're not pushing enough, they're not pressing, they're not in the attacker space, they're not making life difficult. At this moment in time, United are just simply too easy, aren't they, to play against? There's been no reaction from Bristol City game. And how long... I don't buy into this, but fans are now asking for Ruben Sellers to go, aren't they? Another question on the ownership as well. For me, it's too early to talk about Sellers' job as yet. I don't know if that's controversial. I think it is still too early to talk about. We've still got 2 weeks or so left of the transfer window, haven't we? We don't know who they're going to bring in as of yet, and who they're still going to lose, to be fair as well. But I say, you look at that starting 11, that's top 6 quality, and a top 6 quality side, with respect to Swansea, don't fail to register a shot on target against them.
And Sheffield United, can it get worse from here?
It can.
In my opinion, it's far too early to get rid of Ruben Sellers. Like, again, a lot of Ipswich fans, like, I'm not hiding the facts that we both support Ipswich. A lot of fans of Ipswich and Ian Bradley, you support Rotherham. I'm not sure who you support, I'm afraid. Ballon, let us know in the chat. We've probably seen with our fans during the transfer window a lot of jumping to conclusions, a lot of jumping the guns, and a lot of takes that are absolutely ridiculous because, you know, like, we're over exaggerating as the football season has just started again, and some clubs have had bad starts, some haven't. And we've seen that a lot with Ipswich's start as well, haven't we? And, you know, like our transfer window, which in my opinion has been fairly decent, but we've seen with our fans at Ipswich that a lot don't think so. But I think it's far too early to sack Ruben Sellers. It would be absolutely ridiculous to even think about that or to even protest him at the moment. So, again, I don't think that's necessarily worth delving into due to the fact that, again, we need to wait a couple of games to really judge Sheffield United. It's ultimately the owners that aren't putting a lot of money into the club, and ultimately they should be held responsible for where they are at the moment. The only thing that I will say before we jump onto the game is that it is absolutely ridiculous to bandy players on into the middle of the pitch and to basically, I don't know what you call it, castrate them. That might be a horrible word to use. Castigate them. That's the word. Castigate. Don't clip that. Rhys, don't clip that. Castigate them in front of thousands of fans on the field. I don't think that is a good idea at all because, as we all saw with Phil Brown a couple of years ago and Mick McCarthy when he did it at Ipswich, it just shows that you've lost the dressing room. So, after I just used the word castrate live on a football podcast, Rhys, it is now your job to save this segment. So let's talk about Sheffield United's loss last weekend. Again, their second game of the season. They lost 1-0, Rhys, to Swansea City, and it was a Ronald goal on the 66th minute. And I think it's fair to say that Swansea deserved to win, didn't they?
Yeah, it is. I think Swansea really controlled the game without needing to get out a second or third gear. I think how blunt Sheffield United actually were really played into Swansea's hands, and really it made the task a lot easier for them. I think when you compare lineups at the start of the game, you could say Swansea were in for quite a tough afternoon. But I say how blunt United were really made it quite easy. Just to sort of put it into some context as well, Sheffield United 8 shots, none on target. I don't go into XG too much, but I will on this occasion because Sheffield United XG from open play 0.02. I think you will struggle to find a lower XG from open play all season. That practically tells me they didn't get into the final third. They weren't testing the keeper. They weren't testing that Swansea defence. And therefore, they made it extremely easy, really, didn't they, for the home side? Like I say, when a manager comes out and berates the players like that, only one thing can happen. They have to have a reaction. They had to go into that game and show something, to prove something, not necessarily to the manager, more so to the fans, because a lot of us sort of neutrals were back in, I say neutrals, I tried to be neutral. A lot of us neutrals were back in Sheffield United for a minimum of a top 6 finish. And right now they're playing like a relegation favourite, aren't they? Which I know is quite harsh, but is also true. The only positive I'll give to Ruben Sellers' Sheffield United performance on Saturday was at least defensively, like they did look better. That's the only positive I'll give about that performance. They looked solid. They looked okay, which is more than what you can say for the 4-1 defeat against Bristol City, wasn't it? Because I think all 4 goals were avoidable and quite easily avoidable as well in that game. So the only positive I'll give to the players was at least defensively they are more solid. But attacking-wise, there's just nothing there. There is nothing there. And realistically, if we're excusing Ruben Sellers, it's too early, etc., which I agree with, by the way. At what point do the players start taking some responsibility?
Exactly, and again, I think it's too early to really judge this. But at the same time, I'm going to immediately contradict myself because I thought Swansea had an absolutely brilliant performance out there, and thought again they deserved the win. I think, Rhys, we need to give a bit of credit to Alan Sheehan. And again, I just said that it's too early to really be giving players, managers praise or criticism. But Alan Sheehan, he wasn't the fans' favourite to take over the job when I think Luke Williams left. But he's done a decent job so far. He used to obviously be assistant manager at Swansea City. What do you make of this Swansea side? Because they've gone under the radar. They've had an absolutely brilliant transfer window. They've brought in some really good players, in my opinion, including player who we are both familiar with, Cameron Burgess. Could they perhaps be a dark horse for the playoffs, or am I again contradicting myself by jumping the gun too early?
For me, they're not. I don't want to be writing any team off after 2 games, but I don't see Swansea City being sort of top 6 contenders or being dark horses. I just think the competition ahead of them is simply too tough. Yes, they've had a really good transfer window. I think that Ronald has really come into his own, hasn't he? The 2 goals in the last 2 games, if you include the Carabao Cup. I think they've been really, really good. But are they going to be able to maintain this? You've got to factor in injuries. You've got to factor in suspensions. Is the squad depth there? For me, I don't see this Swansea side competing for that top 6. At the moment, they fall into that category of just being a solid championship side, which there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, that they are just that sort of solid championship side.
So let's move on to arguably, in my opinion, the game of the weekend. We saw Derby County play at home to Coventry City. Frank Lampard was actually coming up against his old side. He obviously got Derby County into the playoffs a couple of years ago and ultimately lost in the final. But that game, Rhys, finished 5-3. Look, I mean, I think to make it no surprise that, in my opinion, was arguably the game of the week, is the main image on our thumbnail. What did you make of that game? It was absolutely spectacular, wasn't it?
It was proper championship football, and absolutely proper championship football. So many twists and turns. You never knew what way the game was going to go. It was a fantastic advert for championship football, wasn't it? I had to use that cliche. What I will start off by saying, we've seen the best and the worst of Derby, I think, with how their squad currently is. I thought going forward, they're really, really effective. I thought they were very clinical. Even Jackson looks to be a really, really good threat, which is definitely saying something. But defensively, absolute horror show, weren't they? John Eustace cannot be happy with what he's seeing so far. His philosophy, I think, is definitely coming across in the attacking ways, because they are scoring goals, which obviously is the base to be doing anything. But to concede 8 goals in the first 2 championship matches is a real cause for concern, isn't it? They need a lot more defensive additions, I think, than perhaps what they realised, Derby. But then I look at the system in which John Eustace is actually implementing. He's implementing almost what can be seen as a 3-4-1-2 or a 3-5-2, something along that sort of wavelength. But at Blackburn, he favoured more of a sort of 4-2-3-1. So I just wonder if perhaps going to a back 4 with this Derby side, it would mean dropping one of the strikers for another midfielder. But could that be the key just to stop this defence? Because it really just worried me. But like I say, going forward, any attacking quality that they put on show, absolutely phenomenal. But defensively, abysmal.
What do you think playing around with their defence could potentially lead to that impacting the kind of like goals going forward, the strikers' movement going forward, basically what they have up front? So do you reckon if John Eustace changed their defence around and tried to make them more defensively solid, that would ultimately block up their attack?
I can see what you're saying in the fact that, you change something, it doesn't work, then suddenly everyone's questioning why you've changed it. I can see that 100%. But is there any success in what's happening right now? To concede an average 4 goals a game in this division, it's abysmal. So what actually are you risking? I think you've got to change it, because how long do you allow this to sort of continue? You know, there is a cup game in between these two, but you look at the next 2 fixtures in the league: Bristol City, who put 4 past Sheffield United, and then Ipswich away. That defence has to be better. If not, how many more are they actually going to concede, Derby? Because you look at back three, it doesn't excite me. Even at championship level, like that back three of Sanderson, Bath, and Clark really doesn't excite me at all. Whereas I look at the attacking quality that Derby have got. You could deploy Jackson on the right of a front three. You'd have Morris up front by himself. Ebu Adams could sort of sit just behind it, a sort of number 10 role. You have Elder maybe on the left-hand side. So you could easily, I think, mix around a little bit with that sort of attacking threat and make that quite easy into a sort of three with a striker ahead. This just isn't working. These wing backs in this system for Derby just aren't doing it. So if you leave it for too long, how much in a hole are Derby going to be?
And it's worth mentioning as well that they have a few injuries. Owen Beck at the moment has a calf muscle problem. Curtis Nelson is on the comeback from an ACL injury, but still not ready to make his full return. Lars Jorgen Salvenson is still out injured. Patrick Agiaman, however you pronounce it, he is still recovering from hernia or a surgery to his hernia. And Sondre Langas and Kane Wilson are still unavailable, as they were also injured. So it's worth keeping that in mind as well. But let's talk about Super Frank Lampard's Coventry City. We can talk about how, in my opinion, how poor their defence was. But going forward, they were absolutely spectacular. And look, plenty of people have said that the pressure is on Coventry this season. Do you reckon that Frank Lampard has it in him, and do you reckon Coventry have it in them to surmount a potential playoff campaign after what you saw last weekend?
It's tough. I think it's tough. Again, similar to Derby, it's a team of two halves in the fact that I think what they possess in the attacking sort of third of the pitch is extraordinary. And that sort of attacking threat from Coventry easily should be a top 6 side. But then I look at Coventry's defence and I look at who they've got for each of the positions. They've got more goalkeepers on the books than they've got centre-backs. They've got 4 goalkeepers on the books and only 3 centre-halves. I'm not made up, by the way. That's absolutely genuine. You've got Thomas and Kitching. Then you've got Joel L. I'm not pronouncing that last name. Absolutely no chance. So you've only got those 3 centre-backs. And you've got 4 keepers. One, okay, has got a long-term injury, probably out for the season. But how light they are really does sort of worry me. But you look at that sort of front three. Thomas Asante, you've got Hadji Wright, Mason Clark, Jack Rudoni steps in. You've got Ellis Sims on the bench. Okay, Ellis Sims hasn't been the most free scoring striker in the division over the past couple of years, but to be able to bring him on is an addition, I think, for any side at this level, just to rustle a few feathers in the last sort of 15, 20 minutes. Then you look at that bench as well for Coventry, and again, the players like Rodriguez, who I think would get into most other championship sides, Jamie Allen on the bench, they have got quality, but I just worry about, similar to Derby, I think Derby and Coventry are quite similar. I'm just worried that they're going to need more defensive additions.
So thank you very much to everybody who has joined us in the chat. I know it's a slightly earlier show today, so thank you to everybody who's jumped into the chat. And I should have read this one out earlier on. Ballum has found the live chat on Twitter. It's really difficult to find, by the way. So if you are on Twitter, I badly explain this every week and nobody ever understands what I'm saying. But you simply need to click on the live stream and then it should take you to a separate tab where the live chat should pop up. And good evening to everybody. Is it evening at the moment? Do you think 4:45 is evening, Rhys?
Evening for me is about 6, 7 o'clock. I think it's still late afternoon, I'd say, mate.
Good afternoon to everybody as well. Let's talk about a game that I did actually watch through nefarious means. Hashtag Thauer News, however you pronounce that. Blackburn Rovers 1, Birmingham City 2. Todd Cantwell had a absolutely peach of a goal. He scored an absolutely brilliant volley to get Birmingham in front. But Birmingham to get Blackburn in front. But Birmingham City, they turned it into the late show. They surmounted a very late comeback with Jay Stansfield scoring a late penalty on the 90th minute. And Lyndon Dykes, who is an absolute tower of a man, turned into, and I'm going to quote the Not the Top 20 podcast here, he turned into Robert Lewandowski with that goal. He scored on the 98th minute. Birmingham fans were in absolute raptures. I saw online that a Birmingham fan was rushed to hospital immediately after as he dislocated his arm, celebrating the 98th minute goal. Birmingham, Rhys, have impressed me. I'm going to list off a couple of players who've impressed me so far. Jay Stansfield, he's been really good. Kyogo, he has looked like an absolute live wire so far. We all remember that kind of chip that didn't count against Ipswich that he scored on the opening day of the season. And again, there have been so many other players across the pitch that have impressed me as well, including their midfield pairing of Iwata and Piak. So, real quickly, because we're not going to spend forever on this game, Birmingham, what have you made of them so far? I mean, it's very difficult to judge them, but they've given it a good go so far.
Yeah, they have. And I think their character, that sort of never say die attitude, which was on display again against Blackburn, really is going to be a difference, I think, between them making top six and them not. Is the fact that they just don't give in, do they? They're going to be that annoying sort of club this season who just never know when they're beaten, who never know when to stop. Jay Stansford, there was a lot of question marks over him, wasn't there, coming into this championship season? A lot of people sort of think he is overhyped because, let's be honest, the majority of his goals do come from the penalty spot, but you've still got to be able to put them away. You've still got to deal with that pressure. But what absolutely makes me laugh, and it's nothing to do with the game itself, how rattled did George Hurst make Birmingham City's Twitter admin? So I don't know if you saw it, but after the game, they tweeted out a picture, didn't they, of Stansfield celebrating after the penalty with "This is what I do." And if you don't get the reference, basically, when Ipswich scored that last-minute penalty, which wasn't a penalty, I don't think anyway, but when Ipswich scored that last-minute penalty, George Hurst went on Sky and said, "This is what I do. This is my job. This is what I do." How rattled did we make them? But I thought that first half was pretty sort of laissez-faire. I didn't think any side really sort of laid a glove on their opponents. But it didn't take long, did it, in that second half for Blackburn to sort of get going. And if we're honest as well, Blackburn could have nicked it, couldn't they, themselves? I think it was Grahey, wasn't it, who forced a great save out of Ryan Alsop. And that was just moments before Birmingham won it through Dykes. So that game really could have gone either way.
And I'm going to speed through the rest of the games, as again, we don't go through every single game here on the Championship Weekly. We just go through the main talking points. A big game, I guess, was West Bromwich Albion 3. They were away from home, by the way, to Wrexham City, who I'm absolutely butchering this sentence. It was Wrexham 2, West Bromwich Albion 3. Rhys and I told you that we were very tired this episode. We both had very long work weeks indeed. Middlesbrough beat Millwall away from home 3-0 as well. Watford have made it back-to-back wins as they won at home 2-1 against Queen's Park Rangers. I guess I quickly want to talk about Preston North End 2, Leicester City 1. And we're not going to talk about the game in a lot of detail, but if you paid close attention to our intro, then you saw that we included the clip of Jeremy Monga. Now, we're not going to play the goal, as I'm not sure how kindly the EFL would take to us properly using their footage instead of just creatively using it in our intro. I don't know how copyright properly works. But again, let's quickly get back on track to Jeremy Monga. What a goal. What a young player. 16 years old. I think he must be the youngest ever championship goal scorer. If he isn't, I'm going to try and find out whilst you're talking. But what did you make of Jeremy Monga's goal? And Leicester, what do we make of them? Because they've had a bit of a struggling start to the season, haven't they?
Yeah, I think Leicester are definitely suffering from that sort of Premier League hangover, aren't they? But then again, I'd put all three sides into that same sort of bracket, though. It is tough. I think it's tough when you come down from the Premier League. You get your sort of parachute payments, and then I think everyone expects you to be up there, don't they? Everyone thinks, okay, you're going to be up there. And it's tough, especially Leicester's first game. It was Wrexham. No, it wasn't. It was Sheffield Wednesday, wasn't it? At home, their first game of the season. That was tough that they took their time getting into that one. Had to wait till the second half before they rid off the sort of Wednesday storm when they could actually start to play their game and play their football. So they had it tough in their first game, and they put themselves on the back foot, didn't they? Almost straight away. It's a really big mistake, isn't it, from the Leicester keeper, isn't it? And Devine, to be fair, finishes from a really good angle, but shouldn't even be getting that shot away. It is poor goalkeeping. It's poor defending, really. That sort of naive and early into the game. And yeah, I think Jeremy Monga's become the youngest ever championship scorer since the rebrand, I think, in 2005. I think he's the youngest scorer since then. But he's also Leicester's youngest scorer as well, I want to say.
Actually, and this is going to be a little bit of a quiz for those in chat. A player who now, I guess, plays under John Terry in the Ballers League. He was the youngest goal scorer in EFL history for Wycombe Wanderers. So he used to play for Liverpool as a winger. Also played for Bournemouth in the Premier League as a winger. He most recently played for Hungerford, if we're not counting the Ballers League. So do you know who that player is?
I've got a name, but I'm going to chuck it into our private chat. I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to chuck it into our sort of private chat. As soon as you mentioned Bournemouth, this name came to mind.
You got it right.
Yeah.
So I have an idea. Shall we reveal that player's name on next week's edition of the Championship Weekly? And what I'll do is I won't promote this on our Twitter or anything like that, because this is basically going to be a competition for whoever's listening to this right now. If somebody can DM the Championship Weekly on Twitter, you can find our Twitter in the description down below, then I will give you a prize of some sort, to be a proper kind of like prize, if you will. And yeah, that is basically a very random quick competition, just to kind of like test how far some of you have made it into this episode, and some of your EFL knowledge as well. I always say, Rhys, that you have the best EFL knowledge out of the two of us, even out of everybody at Over the Bar. So if you get the question right, DM it to me on Twitter and we'll sort something out. Are you doing a shirt giveaway? Nice. Maybe not a shirt giveaway, a tad expensive. I don't know, maybe a video game giveaway if people are into that. Or what I might do is a match pass giveaway if they still do. They don't do iFollow anymore, do they? So we can't do that. I'll think of something. It'll be something related to whichever football club you support. So there you go. Just DM us at Championship Pod on Twitter. I think I absolutely butchered that. So, Rhys, can you quickly find what we're called on Twitter?
It's at Champ Podcast, but there's no A in Champ.
Perfect. Probably because there was another podcast out there with the exact same name. So there you go. A little treat for those who are listening to this show. So we are going to end, because we do have some good news to finish the show with on Morecambe. So if you have any thoughts on Morecambe and the fact that they have been saved, then let us know in the chat. a game that we both saw, and I saw it on Sky, so I didn't see it on some dodgy streaming service, was Ipswich Town 1, Southampton 1. If I'm being totally fair here, these are two teams that are particularly difficult to judge. I thought Ipswich played particularly well during segments of the game. There was perhaps an opportunity that if he was a bit taller, Connor Chaplin would have scored. A few players for Ipswich that really impressed me is Matasiwa. I know he was carrying a yellow card, but I loved the commitment that he put into the game. George Hurst absolutely ran his legs off and looked absolutely gassed during the last 10 minutes of the game, but I like to see that in a player. And Sammy Schmodic, who, according to Ipswich Twitter and TWTD, has a broken arm, but I guess we'll hear about that in Kieran McKenna's press conference tomorrow, I believe. So Southampton, though, they played well as well, and there was a young lad who scored, Robinson. I have totally forgotten his first name. That is the type of host that I am. Jay Robinson. There we go. A very young man indeed. Another Southampton wonder kid, because Southampton always seems to produce really good youngsters. We all know about Tyler Dibling and the fact that he came off the bench and played, despite the fact that Amari Hutchinson didn't play for Ipswich over the weekend and ultimately went to Nottingham Forest. But 18-year-old Jay Robinson scored for Southampton. He is an absolutely fantastic young player. Let's talk about both sides though, because I thought both sides had weaknesses. Again, you did a lot more analysis of the game than I did. Talk us through Southampton first of all, because I thought their centre-backs had absolutely turgid games in my opinion. Am I being a little bit harsh here? Because they seem to not have any legs in them. I can't pronounce his name, but Kwashi, is that how you pronounce it? I thought he looked like a deer in headlights during the game. He's only, 21, bless him, and he's new to Southampton as well, having joined from Bundesliga side Hoffenheim. But there were some difficult performances out there, wasn't there, Rhys?
Yeah, I think Southampton looked like a team that had just come down from the Premier League and had hired a new manager. I think that was very evident. I think even if you knew nothing about Southampton and just watched them from that one performance, I think you could see they're in a transition. When they were trying to play out from the back, the amount of times there was loose passes, there was sloppy passes, there was poor balls back to the goalkeeper and put him under a lot of pressure, really. And another day of the Ipswich press is a lot better than what it was on the day. Then we could have ran away with it by half time. I was quite disappointed by Southampton, to be honest. I thought they would have been a little bit more intense, got on our faces a little bit more, made it more difficult. But their reaction after we did go 1-0 up was absolutely perfect as far as I'm concerned. And really, our goal, it did come from a defensive mix-up, didn't it? We capitalise on them playing out from the back poorly. Hurst gets down the wing, puts the ball into the box, and it sums up Southampton's day, doesn't it? I don't think Jack Clark actually gets a touch on it. The ball sort of comes in, it comes off Howard Bellis, it goes into the back of the net. And am I harsh in saying I think the keeper should, Bazunu, I think Bazunu should perhaps do a little bit better. So he commits too early with a dive, he can't get back for the deflection. But the reaction after the goal from Southampton was really, really good. They dominated the rest of that first half. They pegged Ipswich back. They restricted us really to practically nothing. And I thought Ryan Fraser down the right-hand side was exceptional. I thought he was absolutely fantastic all game, tireless, putting good balls into the box, testing our defence. He put a ball into the box for Jay Robinson to score. He capitalised on a couple of mistakes from Leaf at left back as well. It was like he turned back the clock. Ryan Fraser was immense in this game. And I know he struggled with injury, but it goes to show you what an older player can do when they have a full pre-season behind them as well. And if that's Southampton at their worst, if you like, if that's them at their worst and they're only going to get better from here on out, we're in for an exciting time watching Will Steele's side, because the fundamentals are there. It's just a little bit sloppy. It's a little bit messy. If they can tidy that up, they should be able to run away with this league.
Yeah, and Will Still has always been a manager who I've admired, back to the days when he was a meme on football Twitter for some reason. At Reims, he was absolutely brilliant. At Lens, he was absolutely superb as well, finishing 8th and ultimately leaving to be closer to his girlfriend Emma Saunders, who obviously lives in this country. So yeah, a couple of concerns about Ipswich, and then we'll move on to more talk about Morecambe. We really do need a new forward, in my opinion, and I wish Akpom was on the bench. I know he's not up to speed yet, but if we had Akpom just coming off the bench, even during the last 10 minutes of the game, then that would have been fantastic, because Al Hamadi looks to be on his way out. He wasn't on the bench either. I thought perhaps a forward coming onto the pitch during the closing embers of the game was something that kind of like stopped us from winning the game. That was the difference between drawing a game and potentially winning a game. So do you reckon we being Ipswich will sign a new forward soon?
We have to. We I don't know, my voice was so deep just then. We simply have to. We can't go a full what are we in August? A full 4 months till January with having Hurst as our only option. We can't, because we all know how injury prone he is. You mentioned it at the start of this sort of little segment, how tired he was when he at the end of the game. Al Hamadi, if you believe press conferences, I don't. If you believe
Sore
them,
throat.
exactly. Apparently, he's not very well. He's picked up an injury in training, but miraculously travelled over to Nottingham. That's a great coincidence. I'm not salty about that at all, by the way.
Oh, I am.
But apparently, there's been a bid accepted, doesn't there, for Al Hamadi. Apparently, he's going to Luton Town for around £4 million. So, how on earth Ashton's got £4 million for him? It's absolutely exceptional. And when you have these I'll go really off topic here, but when you have these players who mean Nathan Broadhead is a player I'm going to reference now. When you can get £10 million, I know it's 7.5 and then 2.5 with add-ons, but when you get £10 million from Nathan Broadhead, mate, we're in an Ashton masterclass right now. But anyway, back to the sort of the game against Southampton, because I have a lot of issues. I have a lot of worries about the way we set up. A lot of worries about how naive we are playing out from the back. It was sloppy.
I do too.
It was poor. It's Palmer. I really like Palmer in goal. I really do. I think he's up. I saw.
I'll let you finish, but
I think he's the best keeper we've got in the building. I'll go as far as say he's the best keeper that we've got. I think Hladky is a better all-round keeper. I know he's at Burnley now and he's long gone, but if you know me, you know how big of a fan I am of Hladky. I think he fit our system perfectly. Palmer, there's no doubt in my mind, Alex Palmer is a fantastic goalkeeper. Is he a goalkeeper that can play out from the back under pressure and pick out that right pass? No. The amount of times that he gave it into Matasiwa when he had 4 Southampton players around him, you couldn't watch it at times. At times, it's okay, all this tippy-tap of football. I don't mind it, because you look back at our success over the last 2-3 seasons, and that's how we play. That's our method of playing. I can put up with it. That's fine. It's going to go wrong sometimes. It's the nature of the beast. But knowing when to just hit it long is a skill. You need to know, okay, my 2 central midfielders are surrounded by 3 or 4 players. It's not worth it. Just get it out and relieve that pressure. The problem, the slight issue I have with Palmer is that he's very insistent, isn't he? It's always play out from the back. And we can get caught out almost every week if we go in with that same philosophy. But I'm not just worried about defensively. I'm almost scared about our attacking options right now. When you look at the players that we've lost, the snake that I'm not even going to mention his name, the one that's gone to Nottingham Forest, he doesn't deserve to have his name mentioned. But the fact that he's gone, I remember Hull away towards the back end of the championship season and how exceptional he was there. Just a shame he's obviously tarnished his reputation now with the fan base. But you look at our wide positions, I'm worried. I think we're going to need another 2 or 3 additions. It's actually a debate I want you to weigh in on. Who do you think, not the better player, but who fits our system better, Schmodix or Chaplin?
Schmodix, simply because of the way he carries the ball and the runs that he does, but Chaplin is a quicker player and I think he offers more energy. That is one of the problems that we have. You have two players who obviously have quality, who play in very similar positions. Chaplin, I love the energy that he has. He gets involved, he has a lot more pace. But Schmodix, whereas he has a lot of quality and I think he's a better passer and crosser of the ball, I think he's lacking that pace, because there are multiple runs he made on Sunday that, had he have been a bit quicker, he would have been through on goal and he would have scored. So I'm gonna go Chaplin. I'm simply gonna go Chaplin because he's been here longer. And, you know, like I simply think that at the end of the day, when it comes down to our system, having an engine, kind of like having enough energy to be running around the pitch, a bit like what George Hurst didn't have up front the other day, can, you know, like take you a long way in regards to the way that Kieran McKenna plays. And I think Chaplin, he is absolutely tireless. You know, like the positions that he can get himself in. I remember last season when we played Southampton, when he scored that brilliant header, didn't he, in that legendary, not last season, 2 seasons ago, when he got promoted to the Premier League, wasn't it? And he scored that header. He's a type of player to get himself into those positions, and Schmodix can do that as well. I think he offers a lot more creatively, but Chaplin, I think energy at the moment is something that we need, especially next week against Preston. So what do you make of that? Is that a weird opinion to have?
I'm probably going to upset the chat. And if this gets clipped up and we put this out on socials, I'm probably going to upset a lot of neutral fans and a lot of Blackburn fans. In terms of all-round play, and
They're
what
both shit. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
In terms of how they fit our system, all-round play, and how they bring players into the game, Schmodix cannot start for us. Off the ball, he does not do enough. He's built his career through the lower divisions by being an absolute potent goal scorer, by being clinical. And I absolutely cannot take that away from him. He's a very, very clinical number 10. He will get you goals in the division if he's utilised correctly. But what Chaplin offers you is what Schmodix cannot. The amount of cross-field balls, the amount of passes he put into Jack Clark's path when he came on, those cross-field switches. Chaplin understands our system. He's a player that we need to have within our starting lineup. These partnerships that are so important for any successful team start from players like Chaplin. I would have put Broadhead into that category, but he's obviously gone off to Wrexham now. I think players who understand the way we play, not necessarily going to score 15 goals, but because of Chaplin's all-round play, he passes, apart from that free kick, his passes out wide, the way he finds these wide players is something that Schmodix can't do. For me, Schmodix doesn't get his head up and doesn't find these passes that Chappers does. He doesn't bring other people into play. At times, Schmodix goes missing too often for me. He goes missing too often within these games. And I would start Chaplin in that number 10 and have Schmodix on the bench. So I think he's a good option to have coming on, especially when we've only got George Hurst in the building as well. So I would potentially, if we're going to use, these rumours about Wolfenden are true, I'd start having Schmodix as our backup striker and start Chappers in the number 10.
Yeah, and I don't think you're wrong by that. Again, I said that Chaplin is the better player in our system, and I said that simply because of, what he offers off the ball as well, how quick he is, how tireless he is. So, again, it's good that we have those options, but again, we're about to move on to Morecambe. I simply think, 1, we need another striker. 2, we can keep... This was my controversial opinion. I like Palmer, but I thought Hladky was a lot more confident passing the ball back. There were a couple of times when I had my heart in my mouth a little bit, if that is how the saying goes, when Palmer was passing out the back. But he did it well, and he didn't make any mistakes, in my opinion, against Southampton. But should we get promoted, I reckon we will need another goalkeeper. And again, I know these thoughts are absolutely everywhere at the moment, but we need 1 or 2 new midfielders, simply because at the moment Taylor isn't quite good enough. There is a player in there. I think he needs a loan, a bit like Al Hamady had last season, like a loan to a lower end championship club before you can really play first team football. And Cameron Humphreys, look, Kieran McKenna said in a press conference this week that Humphreys is a very important player and that he's not leaving this window. Well, I think he needs a little more game time, in my opinion, because, you know, from what I've seen so far, he has a lot of commitment. Again, I love his energy, but he's not up to speed with championship football. So that is the Ipswich section of the show. I still have our old We Follow the Town background on here, so we could easily just transition back to We Follow the Town if you want. I would absolutely love that one day. Let's talk about Morecambe there, because Morecambe have had a takeover. I think the main talking point from their takeover is the fact that Derek Adams got their sack as well, because they basically came in and immediately got rid of him. So Punjab Warriors, I might be wrong here, Rhys, and I might be able to give you a little bit of insight if I am right. Did they used to run Worcester Warriors, or am I wrong?
So, Warrington, the rugby team you're talking about, yeah?
Worcester Warriors. I might be spouting absolute bullshit here.
I know that Jason Whittingham owned Warrington, the rugby team, but I'm not sure about Worcester. But again, I'm not a rugby fan, to be fair. So,
okay, so I got that wrong. So basically, Jason Whittingham was the Worcester Warriors owner, because I follow Championship rugby quite a lot, and I remember when Worcester Warriors at one point were an absolutely massive team in Championship rugby, and then they got to the stage where they got up to the Premiership, and Jason Whittingham took all of their funds away from them. They got kicked out of their stadium. They now play in an absolutely tiny stadium, and they're no longer a Premiership team, which is very worrying indeed. And that was Jason Whittingham, the old Morecambe owners. And I inadvertently slandered their new owners, Punjab Warriors, because they have taken over at Morecambe FC. They recently finalised the deal after a period of uncertainty and suspension from the National League as well. But their first call of action was to sack Derek Adams, who we all remember from Plymouth Argyle and Morecambe as well when they were last in the Football League. Give Morecambe a lot of credit. They gave it a good go last season, in my opinion. Would you have gotten rid of Derek Adams? Because he is a good manager, in my opinion, a very experienced manager as well, who's been there and done that. And in the National League, I know we have the likes of Mark Hughes in the National League at the moment. I think Truro City's, people always mistake me for a Truro City fan because I live in Cornwall, but I'm not at all really. John Askey as well, he's the Truro City manager. I think I've got that right. He obviously used to manage Hartlepool as well, got them promoted into League Two. So what I'm basically trying to say, Rhys, is that the National League have a bunch of good managers with a lot of EFL experience. And is it a mistake to get rid of Derek Adams?
I mean, you talk about Mark Hughes, but he's no man's Andy Peaks, mate. If you get that very, very vague reference, that's the manager of Tamworth, the National League side that I follow as well.
The mighty Tamworth.
There's only one of us, mate. It's the wrong decision. It's wrong. In my opinion, it goes to show that loyalty really doesn't exist in football anymore. He stuck there, didn't he? Throughout all the tough and turgid times, he was still there. He helped staff members pay their rent. There was a story about how he saved someone from being homeless within the club. He's a proper sort of good man, isn't he? He's one of football's good guys. He stuck by the club. He stuck there throughout the tough times. And he deserved then to take them or lead them into this next chapter. He deserved to be at the helm here. To announce his departure just 75 minutes, I believe, after the takeover was announced seems incredibly harsh. Like this was almost pre-planned. Like they knew they were coming in with their own man, which is okay. Of course it is. You know, when a new consortium takes over, naturally they're going to have a man in mind that they want to take over. But it just feels extremely harsh. I think Derek Adams has been extremely loyal towards Morecambe, and he's had nothing in terms of it being repaid. You know, he's had nothing come back towards him. My only hope for this whole situation from Morecambe is that Punjab Warriors are coming in with the right intentions, and they've brought this club for the right reasons. This is a huge fan base who have been let down time and time again, not just by Jason Whittingham, but by the EFL as well. Finally, they are getting their National League season underway, aren't they? They had their first 3 games suspended, but they're hosting Altrincham, I want to say, on Saturday. So they're finally getting their season underway, but their squad's extremely thin. I just hope they're in this for the right reasons. But what I will say, tiny little bit of negativity. Some of the morons on Twitter who have been abusing Ashveer Singh Johal. That's not too bad, actually. I'm gassed with that. Some of these morons on Twitter who have been abusing this gentleman just because of his religion, absolute awful people. You know, people look at him as a complete unknown. He's coming as the youngest manager within the top 5 divisions, but he's worked under Colo Torre, he's worked under Cesc Fabregas in Italy, and he fits the new mold, don't he? He fits this mold of up-and-coming manager who works underneath a sort of predecessor and then takes his own reign on. Yes, it's a risk, but it's the way football's going. We've seen it be a success at other clubs, and Morecambe are just coming into it with their own man now, aren't they? But I reiterate that point once more. I just hope they'll come in with the right intentions.
Yeah, and Twitter is an absolute cesspool, so I agree with you there. Like, Twitter can be a very horrible place. But Morecambe, they have got the likes of Jan Songo, who used to play for Plymouth Argyle. They've got Gwion Edwards playing there as well. So they have got this smattering of real talent for the Vanarama National League. I really do rate, look, I don't think they should have gotten rid of Derek Adams, but I'm happy that it's given Ashveer Singh Johal. I think I said that right. I'm very happy that it's given him the opportunity to basically get into management. He is a very good young coach. First started coaching at Wigan Athletic under Colo Torre, as you just mentioned, Rhys. He's also worked under Cesc Fabregas. He was briefly his assistant at Italian club Como. And then he was also the B team head coach to Notts County as well. So, look, you do get a lot of racist morons who on Twitter who will just yell at clouds. Unfortunately, Twitter gives anybody a platform. But yeah, so like take that as you will. So yeah, like I'm incredibly happy that he's gotten the opportunity, because I heard about him quite a lot last year, and that was when he was following Cesc Fabregas in Italy and basically being assistant manager there. And people were just talking about his age and how at that time a 28, 29-year-old coach / manager was basically plying his trade over in Italy. And I'm incredibly happy that he's been given the opportunity, because, you know, like, it is a brilliant pathway into football. You get a couple of young managers who perhaps risk it a little too high up the pyramid when given the opportunity by an owner, but I think Morecambe is an absolutely brilliant first step, because nobody will judge him if he doesn't do very well. His coaching career won't be over. He'll be able to get another brilliant job after that, because Morecambe are in a very difficult position still at the moment. So yeah, I'm very happy that he's been given the opportunity, and I bet we're both very happy because both of our local teams play in the Vanarama National League. We're both happy that we'll be able to see Morecambe this season as well. So I'm just going to go through a couple of comments. Oh yeah, something I wanted to ask you earlier on, Rhys. Reading FC, they've appointed the very first head of AI in England. And I came out of this after you mentioned AI. I can't remember under what context, but you mentioned it earlier on. Okay, Reading fans at the moment, they're having a massive go at their new owner for not bringing in any new forwards. What do you make of somebody bringing in a head of AI? Like that is scary, isn't it?
Utter woke nonsense. They've brought in a head of AI. AI needs a... Why? It feels like something you hear at a club, isn't it? Always sort of data, like Sheffield United. I think it's under that context. We talk about data-led analysis and all this. But head of AI, I'm struggling to think how AI would have such an impact at a football club that it needs its own department. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't understand it. And basically, they're throwing money down a drain. Balaam, I haven't read this question, so I'm just reading it out right here. Why do you think the last owner being English, I feel like that talk about foreign managers and English football? I think that's in regards to Morecambe. Sorry, guys, I'm quickly reading through the chat. Whilst I do so, Rhys, can you go through the plugs again? Since we last did our last podcast on Over the Bar, we used to do the plugs every week, but our plugs have obviously changed. So, would you mind doing them, please?
Of course, and I'm not definitely going on my phone to double check that handle on Twitter. So you can find us on Twitter. Just type in @ChampPodcast without the A in Champ, and we'll come straight up. We're on YouTube. Again, just type in Championship Weekly Pod or Championship Weekly Podcast. One of those two will be the first suggestion that pops up. Make sure you subscribe to us over there. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. You can find us also on Facebook. Again, just type in that same name. Hit us a follow. Hit us a like, however Facebook now works. Hit us a like, hit us a follow. And remember to DM us on Twitter about that footballer question as well.
Ian, we actually spoke about Sheffield Wednesday a lot earlier in the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us, by the way. We really appreciate it. And Balaam also asks, do we think John Textor will take over at Sheffield Wednesday? So, John Textor has been in the news a lot lately. We all know what happened with Crystal Palace and the fact they got demoted to the Europa Conference League, which in my opinion is probably a blessing in disguise, as they might actually win that. But John Textor to Sheffield Wednesday. Look, there needs to come a point, in my opinion, when the EFL are more, strict in regards to owners coming into EFL football. And I think the FA have a lot of responsibility there too. John Textor to Sheffield Wednesday should not happen after what happened with Crystal Palace. And of course, Lyon as well, and how they almost got relegated out of the Ligue 1 simply because, they had no money. They were in an awful financial state. So what do you think of John Textor allegedly taking over at Sheffield Wednesday?
Have the fans not been through enough? Seriously, the fans have been put through the ringer. They've been put through 10 rounds of Chancery. The last thing that Sheffield Wednesday fans deserve is another unknown owner who comes in not with best intentions at heart and just runs this club into the ground even more. That's the last thing these fans deserve. What I'd like to see from the EFL, I can't see it happening. What I'd like to see from the EFL is then put a statement out and say, right, boom, we're doing no more takeovers for the next 2 years. We're going to refine and we're going to repair and we're going to look at the EFL fit and proper ownership test. And we're going to scrutinise it to a T. We're going to come up with this plan. We're going to formulate it this way. And we're going to go through all 72 clubs within the EFL. And we're going to test everyone again. We can go through it all again and figure out who's good for that club and who's not good for that club. And anyone who fails that new, refined and reformed ownership test then has questions and they get kicked out. It should be as easy as that. We were on the brink of losing Morecambe. We lost Bury. We're on the brink, I believe, of potentially losing Sheffield Wednesday. how many more clubs are going to go down the drain before this EFL system, in terms of the fit and proper ownership test, gets looked at? I feel like we say this every week, especially with the old podcast, but it's true. It's how many more clubs are going to be at the knife because the EFL and the FA aren't stepping up and doing proper due diligence. We mentioned it earlier when talking about Morecambe. Jason Whittingham almost made Warrington, the rugby side, almost out of existence as well. There was another owner who killed a football club abroad, Chansiri. His family owned a football club abroad, and they killed that club. Yes, yet they went to the Premier League and tried to buy a club. The Premier League said, go do one. The EFL welcomed him in with open arms. What does that tell you about the standards for the fit and proper ownership test?
Yeah, it's absolutely abysmal. I mean, a couple of years ago, he was playing Fortnite on Instagram. He was like flexing that. He is a 59-year-old man, by the way. So if a 59-year-old man is behaving like that on social media, and I'll never forget the old Yeovil owner whose name has totally escaped my mind, but he was an absolute egotistical nut as well, who to this day is still seething about it on social media. So I think John Textor is simply another person like that. I think it's an absolutely abysmal move, and hopefully it doesn't happen. But that is that for this week's show. We will be back at some point next week. We'll let you know when, because again, we're both very busy people. Well, what we can promise is that we will at least try and record every week, because I know on the Football League Weekly we listen to that. Our schedules got in the way, which is ultimately why that podcast stopped. But we are in a position now where we can give you top quality football content when we can. So thank you very much for watching. And finally, Rhys, I just wanted to say something to you.
Where are you? Let's be having you!
And we will be having all of you next week on the Championship Weekly podcast. It is called that. It is the Championship Weekly podcast. I'll see you next week.